It's a new year. Happy 2023, everybody, and a new episode here on Release Date Rewind. I'm your host, Mark J. Parker, and my list of movies to talk about is long and full for this year ahead, so keep this podcast on your radar. It's also Friday the 13th today, and we have a perfect movie celebrating a milestone anniversary for this special day that comes around only once in a while. That movie is the 30-year-old horror comedy Leprechaun, which was released on January 8th, 1993, and was successful enough to spawn a whole franchise that we're going to discuss. The Guilty Pleasure is Jennifer Aniston's feature debut, and what a debut it is. I liked this movie so much as a kid that I dressed up as the Leprechaun for Halloween one year, maybe around 3rd or 4th grade, and I had the red wig and everything, and this girl came up to me at a party and asked if I was a girl, as if that was important. What's important is, I want me gold, I should have said to her, but oh well, I did it. If you haven't seen this movie, I understand, but it's playing on YouTube for free with ads, so enjoy life and give it a watch. All right, kids, let's fly over the rainbow because it's time to rewind.
I'm the leprechaun. I'm the leprechaun.
Love it.
That's Mike Myers as from Wayne's World on SNL when he's doing the I'm the leprechaun with Garth.
Yes. Oh, totally. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, we've started, and as you can tell, hopefully you can remember his voice because he's been on this show a few times. Always in the winter, Jeff. You are like my winter expert because you were on last December for Scream and for Hook. The December before that. Now he's here in January for a guilty pleasure. I know you weren't able to really rewatch the movie recently because the Roku channel you mentioned, and I saw
it was in Spanish.
Spanish.
Mark, I really tried.
You're like, let me learn.
I was like, I've seen this movie so many times. I could really talk about it. I'm just gonna let it go.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna let it go. It'll be okay.
I realized it's free on YouTube with ads, but they're not that annoying. So when I was rewatching, isn't that crazy? I'm like, I needed that to be. I would have
watched it. I would have done that. I would have watched
right?
it.
Right. That's okay. But you know it well. It's fine. No worries. But please welcome everybody. My friend, filmmaker, podcaster, does a whole bunch of really cool stuff, and we're gonna chat for a second about it before we get into Leprechaun. Welcome back, Jeff Frumess. Jeff, thank you so much. How were the holidays? Tell me everything.
The holidays were good. We did our Hanukkah thing. I enjoyed just the general Christmas vibes as well. And then I got to experience my first Christmas Eve because we have some Italian Christians are our neighbors. So we have that like Italian, because I know like Italians, they do Christmas their kind of way. So we got the whole experience. We went over and they had a big feast. We just had and we really love our neighbors, and we had just such a lovely time. We got to really experience what Christmas Eve is all about in real life, not just what I've seen in the movies.
Right.
And then on Christmas Day was the 8th day of Hanukkah, so it was a Christmas Hanukkah.
Oh wow,
which was really nice. Yeah, it was very, very nice. And I really do. I always identify as a Christmas Jew.
Yeah,
I just love Christmas so much. I love everything about it. To me, I know it's a religious holiday for most, but for me, I think of it as a very secular American pastime that I grew up with and appreciate in a very secular way, but it is very part of American culture for me. So I like it. I love Christmas, man.
I hear you. That's great.
Big Christmas guy. Yeah.
Oh, good. And the kids had fun, and you got
kids
good
had
gifts.
fun.
Nice.
Everybody got gifts, and
the cutest fam.
And thank you. And it's funny because like our daughter was like, she's like, I wish I was Christian. She like wants to be Christian because she loves Christmas. I was like, honey, look, we're Jews, but like you can still love Christmas. You can still enjoy Christmas. We can enjoy Christmas. We do our own thing. And that's so but it was just so cute because she was just very sad. She wanted a Christmas tree, and we decorate. We put up blue lights everywhere. We do blue lights. A lot of our neighbors do Christmas lights, so we rep
Nice,
we're
good.
the Jews repping on the block with our Jewish lights, and
Yeah, and White
it's
Plains.
just nice. Yeah,
there you
man.
go.
Why not? Why not?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
and it's just really, again, the thing about holiday lights in general, whatever holiday it is, I feel like it's a very important thing because a lot of people can or have a propensity to get depressed or whatever because of the shorter days and it's just very bleak. And so I think that the best way to counterbalance that is with holiday lights, and it should be it should be a like a government subsidized thing across the country. You should just have lights everywhere. Every street post should have lights that automatically go up and just make everybody feel good. It's like, what a great way to make someone feel good without having to do anything,
Oh, I love that, Jeff. Yeah.
Just have like a not Christmas, just whatever, holiday vibe in general.
Yeah, just
for everybody.
Lights. Absolutely.
For everybody, whether you're Christian or Jewish or Muslim or whatever, or you're Hindu, whatever the deal is, when the winter solstice comes around, you have winter holiday lights that brighten the dark nights.
I hear that because, man, these days are short. And it's not only that they're short and dark, but also my productivity level, my interest in doing all my stuff. Ooh, man, it wanes, baby. When it's like 4 o'clock and dark, I'm like, I just want to watch Housewives and eat pizza and just watch movies. Yeah. So, I hear you. Speaking of movies, Jeff, before we get into this movie, I want to know about your latest movie. Tell everyone who's listening. I'm so curious. I know it premiered, your film Gouge Away.
Which you also had a hand in.
A little one, a long time ago.
But listen, Candy and I owe Candy a phone call. Boy, do I owe her a phone call. Candy is Candy's in the movie, and she is awesome in her role. That's which great. Is like went from like being kind of small to being slightly bigger than what was intended. Gouge Away started off life as another script called Wash Away that ultimately, I was trying to make something really, grotesque and crazy and psychologically,
it's good. It was a great script.
It was. But, ultimately, I'm really glad that I didn't finish that script I'm kind of happy that things turned out the way they did because it just would have required the actors to do a lot of, very heavy things that, maybe, I don't know, like you have to handle these things with such care and there was a lot of like trauma-based stuff in there that, was, it serviced the story, but it was also it was really heavy. It was heavy-handed. You read the script,
Oh, yeah, it was. I mean, that ending was wow. I remember it
was
very
some
well.
Ending. And the script Gouge Away ended up being very dark as well. But like it was basically what Gouge Away is it's the sequel to a movie that never actually existed because it was the only way to finish the movie was to actually make a sequel to the movie using the footage that would have been in the first movie. And so that's kind of how I did it. And I basically was shooting and writing and editing all at the same time, and it was very confusing. And I'm not even sure if it makes sense. I think it makes sense. Did I send you the screener? I don't know if I did. If I didn't, I gotta send you this. Oh my God!
Yeah,
let me send. Yeah, I'm gonna send it to you as soon as we get off.
If you want to, I'd love to see it. Is it going to play at any more festivals? I know it premiered at Genre Blast, which I'd love to go to someday.
Yes,
I know that's a big one.
So it might play. I have not submitted to more festivals because my resources. I spent every resource that I had to get the movie completed.
Oh
and
my
now
God. Good for you.
Ultimately, the main goal here was to complete the movie. I wasn't so concerned with any kind of festival run to begin with because I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to complete this thing. And I made a promise to myself that I had to see this thing through. I started it. I had to finish it. And so for me, it was about finishing something that really hurt that it was left unfinished. And, partially it was my fault and partially it was just circumstance. And, it was a battle. It was a battle to get everything together. We did it. It came out. I mean, I made that movie for even less money than what I made my first movie for somehow.
Wow.
And
amazing.
It's crazy, but it exists. And yes, I will send it to you. And actually, I would love to actually hear because I'd want you to watch it blind. I want to hear I want to know if you understand what's going on. So
okay.
you tell me, you'd be like, Jeff, I don't know what the hell is going on here, or I do. I mean, it on paper, it all makes sense.
Right.
Like I checked all the math, I'm like, okay, yeah, everything actually makes sense. But it's another thing for people to actually watch something and be like, okay, I understand why this is happening. Like,
totally.
And that's where a lot of things get lost in translation. And, it happens to filmmakers all the time. I'm a lot more lenient about things not necessarily making sense or not worrying about that stuff, because I know what it is to be you get so mired down in like one aspect or something. And then you're like, you just assume that everybody knows what is in your brain, that it's just going to radiate out. It's going to it's all going to make sense.
So do you think you'll self-distribute in the coming
100%,
months?
100%. Yes.
Okay,
so
cool.
So one of the things about making micro-budget feature-length films, I've made 2 now, is I own them. I own the movies in their entirety. I did not crowdfund these movies. I don't have to do any fulfillments or anything. I just simply own the movie, and when it's time to distribute, and I have a self-distribution plan for the digital stuff, I probably will just do Film Hub. But at the end of the day, if someone's going to be distributing the movie and making money, it might as well be me, and not giving my movie to someone else. And now it's like everybody's focused on Tubi TV, which is where I think that's really my primary goal. And then to do a really solid physical release. And then really not to put so much emphasis, man. It's like, look, it's just like doing the live shows, man. You finish a film, move on to the next one. So I'm actually already writing my next film. It's called My Shadow.
My Shadow.
I'm at page 50.
Ooh, look at you.
It is going to be the most challenging film I've ever made, because it involves a lot, but it's a type of movie. It's a movie where if I can pull it off, like really pull it off as the full vision that I have in my head, and I've never made a movie to this day, I've not made a movie that completely executes the vision that I initially had for it.
Oh yeah, I hear you.
But if I can, I think this is a movie that like I could sell the shutter. I really do. I really think it's like that kind of thing.
That. Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I feel very strongly about this idea. And the only thing I will say about it, and I guess this is really the first time I'm publicly talking about it.
Ooh, tell me, give me the exclusive. I'm Gail Weathers.
Well, actually, it's Frankenstein meets Frankenweenie meets Pet Cemetery meets Little Shop of Horrors meets Ed and His Dead Mother. If it all took place in the world of Eraserhead, directed by David Lynch.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
That is, and so that is
quite a cocktail.
That is a cocktail, man. That with a little bit of Reanimate. I don't know if I mentioned Reanimate. Reanimate thrown in there too. So it's I'm really happy with how it's coming out too. It's really quirky, really weird. It really is the voice that I've been cultivating over these last 2 movies. I feel like this is a voice that I've now found. Yeah. That's the next one. So we'll see.
Oh, cool, Jeff. Good for you. Yeah. All right. I love that. Anytime I hear someone is writing even 50 pages, like that's amazing. Good for you. Because I've only been focusing on shorts. I'm going to work on a feature just kind of for fun of it, writing it. But, dude. But wow, anything over like 20 pages, I'm like, what? I'm in shorts world.
It's just exercising a muscle, man. You get to a point, you already know what it is to write a script, and you've written a bunch of them. All you got to do is when you push the envelope and you just keep going and going and going. And then once you've done it, once you've gotten to that point, you go, oh, that's what this is. And you'll be able to do it even easier the next time and the next time and the next time.
That's great. Good for you. Keep the creative juices flowing. I'm sending good vibes your way. But now, Jeff, let's talk about a whole different movie. Let's rewind. We're going to talk about a guilty pleasure called Leprechaun that came out 30 years ago this month. I'm so happy you're here to talk about this, because you and I, we like our horror, we like our weird stuff, but also it's just fun because I know that, this movie, it's not a good movie, but I have to tell you, after rewatching it, this movie gives me such comfort, maybe because it's that thing that happens to us when we watch movies that we watched as a kid. So rewatching them, you just immediately kind of feel like that warm blanket, which is funny to say.
It's a comfy blanket.
Like Leprechaun is a comfy blanket for me, Well, before I set the scene and tell you what was going on at this time 30 years ago, tell me, Jeff, when did you first see Leprechaun? Do you remember how old you were? Do you have any memories of that first time?
I was young and I saw it on TV, and I still remember I remember the opening very well. And as a young person, and this is the way it is with a lot of horror movies, even when the tone doesn't match that, like it doesn't like match what you are experiencing. It was a very serious movie to me when I first saw it. Like that opening scene is super serious. And then, when I watched it again as an adult, and I've seen it as an adult several times, a bunch of times, I like, obviously it's like, it's very schlocky. It's very like goofy, but like as a kid, you take it. And it was the same thing. I remember Troll 2. I remember like thinking Troll 2, like the ending, you want some Joshua at the very end when they're eating the mom. Right. I was like, holy shit, this is so serious. And it was like it's just not serious at all. But like,
oh my God.
You
are
happens.
So right. I thought the same thing. And rewatching it, like I said, like it's that warm blanket. I remember it so well. But as a kid, same thing, Jeff, especially the beginning. The beginning, not that it's scary at all, but I can remember feeling scared as a kid because it's so dark. And now this goblin-y leprechaun is now in this guy's house and, at the top of the stairs after he pushes his wife down, like,
Right.
So I am right there with you that, it seems so serious, so, intense when actually I know it's a horror comedy, but it's pretty much a comedy, it's funny because just as you get older, you realize, like, oh, wow, I was wrong about this. Like I am seeing this with fresh eyes, but as a kid, it's scary, right? So we'll get into it. We'll talk about our favorite scenes and all that good stuff in a second.
The luck of the Irish is being packed and shipped to a little town in South Dakota, whose luck may have just run out.
Let me set the scene for you, Jeff.
Please.
So this is what was going on in pop culture in the beginning of 93, 30 years ago. So you bring up Troll 2. Love it. This is kind of, it's funny because Leprechaun and its franchise is sort of what another franchise that you and I love that we were just talking about on your show, Scream, would make fun of, right? The original Scream was talking about like, all these lame, repetitive, bad, schlocky horror movies. This is what was out in the early 90s, horror, okay? We had Tremors. We had Child's Play 2, Gremlins 2, Troll 2, a movie called Frankenhooker, and Arachnophobia.
We talked a lot about Frankenhooker.
Frankenhooker, right?
Playing at the Alamo this month.
That's awesome. Oh my God. Yep. And I was reading that the makeup artist for this film was the makeup artist for Frankenhooker. So there you go. That's a double feature right there.
Gabe,
right?
What's his name?
Gabe, is it Bartolos? Something like that?
Yeah. Oh
right?
Man, that dude's done a lot of movies, man.
Legend. Totally. Really good stuff. So all of those movies were out in 1990. 1991 brought us Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, a little schlocky, right? That was kind of Freddy at his most schlocky. Yes. We had Child's Play 3, Critters 3. Army of Darkness was then in 92. That was part of the Evil Dead franchise, which this film, rewatching, a lot of the low angles and a lot of the running shots really make me think of, running through the woods in Evil Dead, right? And then we had Critters 4. So a lot of these schlocky horror comedies, especially, right? They were very popular, not always that good. So in comes Leprechaun, okay? So on the news side, we were just talking about how Scream 6 is set in New York City, a place where Jeff lives. I used to live there. I thought this was fun, Jeff. 30 years ago this month, cigarette advertisements were banned in New York City's MTA in the subways.
Really?
Starting in January 93.
That was the beginning.
That was the beginning of blocking those ads out.
Right.
So there you go. Yeah, the beginning of the end for SIGs. On the TV side, I thought this was so interesting and like, can you imagine if like they did that today? Get this. So I didn't know this TV movie at all. I kind of needed a refresher on the true crime story of Amy Fisher. But ABC and CBS simultaneously broadcast their own individual movies about the Amy Fisher crime. She was having an affair with a married man. She was a minor. Yep, exactly. She kills Joey's, or no, she didn't kill Joey's wife, but she shot him in the face.
Shot Amy Fisher.
Shot her in the face.
Shot the wife in the face.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had no idea because, we were pretty young. Early days of January, on the same night, ABC aired their version with Drew Barrymore, which is so funny that's where she was in her career. And CBS aired their version with Alyssa Milano, which is also funny because Drew Barrymore was in Poison Ivy and Alyssa Milano was in Poison Ivy too. So there you go. Weird. And then how funny, NBC had broadcast their own film a couple days earlier, so they beat these two. I didn't recognize any names in the NBC version, but whoa, like kind of funny how back then, obviously TV movies were all the rage, and honestly they're kind of the rage now, just we call them streaming movies, right? So it's funny when you see like, you know, things like The Dropout and all these, you know, that the whole Adnan serial podcast, Adnan Syed a few years ago, you know, I thought it was interesting how we see this example 30 years ago of these TV movies all talking about the same thing, but there was such a rush to make your own version, and how that's kind of a thing still today, you know, with different streamers doing their thing. So random fun fact. On the music side, Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You from The Bodyguard, a film I talked about not that long ago on the show.
By Dolly Parton.
Yes, written by good old Dolly. That was #1 for weeks and weeks and weeks. So that was having its moment.
One of the most profitable and successful songs ever in the history of songs. The Bodyguard soundtrack is up there with one of the great because of that song.
Oh yeah, it's amazing how many awesome singles came from that soundtrack. Totally. So she was the reigning music queen. Also a song that I forgot about but love, Rhythm is a Dancer.
I love that song.
That was big in the day at 30 years ago. Popular movies: A Few Good Men, Aladdin, Disney's Aladdin, Scent of a Woman, The Bodyguard, and Forever Young. Those were the top 5. Jurassic Park came out later in 93. Yep, exactly. So we weren't there yet, but I'm sure those trailers were playing.
The Bodyguard was 93? I thought it was 91.
No, The Bodyguard was 92. Thanksgiving, 92. So that was still popular.
Gotcha.
Yep, 2 months later. Yep. So those were the top 5 films at the box office. Most of them were all from, you know, the year prior, because this was the first weekend-ish of the year back then. And so Leprechaun, you know, you would think they would have released Leprechaun, I don't know, in March, closer to St. Paddy's Day. But, you know, we're talking about a movie that was kind of dumped in the dumping grounds. You know, January, we know, was sort of like for a long time. What do you think, Jeff? Because Scream 5 was in January. I feel like January now is no longer a dumping ground for movie releases. Or do you think it still is?
Kind of depends. What I don't think of it as a dumping ground. What I think of it as a way of leveling the playing field, because a lot of the things that maybe would, like, for instance, again, to bring up Scream, since we love talking about Scream so much, you look at like Scream 1 and Scream 2 both came out in December, but Scream 3 I think came out in January.
It was early February.
And I don't know when Scream 4 came out, but Scream 5 came out in January. And I think what that is all about is that, you know, Christmas time really became, or at least I don't know how it was in the 90s as much as it is now, or at least in the last 2 decades, where you release your big prestige Oscar film. People are watching big Oscar films. Any film that's going to do big box office business is coming out around December. And you are not going to pit any movies that have potential at making box office bucks against something that's just super out of its league. You know, you could sit there and talk about how, this movie just didn't do well at the box office. Or you could be like, hey, wait a minute, why are you releasing that now? And so give a movie a chance to spread its legs instead of pitting it against, you know, competition where it's not going to do well. So I don't think of January as a dumping ground anymore. I think of January is a very strategic sort of place. Like, for instance, Megan is coming out now in January. And they could have released Megan. They started doing a campaign for Megan on TikTok with everybody doing the viral dance in October. I thought it was going to have an October release. I'm going, well, if you're not going to release in October, but you're doing this campaign, like, my God, does that mean you're going to release it in December or November? They're like, or November. And they're like, no, we're going to do it in January.
Yeah, old school.
Which makes a lot of sense. And now it's been they've established it with this. Everybody knows who Megan is because of that dance. So it's like, it was actually really smart marketing technique. I believe it was Blumhouse. I'm going to go see it. I'll probably go see it on Saturday night. So
it looks fun. It looks totally fun. I don't know if I'll go to the theater, but I mean, it looks fun. I love a good killer doll robot. Yeah. I mean, let's do it. Why not? But you're right. You bring up a great point. Yeah. January, it could be a dumping ground for some bad movies, or for movies like Megan, it clears the path. She's free. There's not much competition at all, especially right now. So Leprechaun comes out January 8th, 1993. Jeff, I'm going to throw it over to you in your own words, because some people listening might have never seen this. They're not as cool as us. In your own words, tell us, what is Leprechaun about?
Leprechaun is about, it's okay. So this family is moving, I guess, from the big city or whatever, from what I remember, which features a Jennifer Aniston in her very first feature film as a star. And, you know, the funny thing, too, is like she was super embarrassed by this film and sort of like downplayed it for a long time. And it's so funny because literally next year she lands Friends and then blows up and became not just Jennifer Aniston, but also Jennifer Aniston's hair, which was like the biggest thing in the world.
Rachel, yes.
Yeah, especially like Rachel hair from season like 2 to 4, 2 to 3. That was like the hottest hair, dude. Everybody wanted that hair. Every guy was in love with Rachel.
Yep.
You know, every girl wanted to be Rachel. You know, that was a big thing. I remember that, man. I remember that well. Even young, I remember that.
Oh yeah.
And then she did something to her hair in season 4 where it was like her hair just like she went straight.
It was very straight and long for a while, right? Yep.
But you know what's kind of funny is that the Rachel is now really become the Karen, which is kind of sad.
Yeah,
it's so sad.
Right.
It's like mom hair, but like, man, in the 90s, that was hot, dude. That was hot fucking style, man.
It had a bounce, baby.
Dude,
yeah, but you're so right.
Man.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. Like that was like that was the look. That was the look. It's so funny how now it's like that's the Karen look.
That's the look you run away from.
That's the look that you run away from. That's the I want to talk to a manager look.
Yes.
In any case. You have a young Jennifer Aniston. I believe that's also a pre-nose job Jennifer Aniston. She looks like she's a little bit more beaky, which I don't care. It's just, I got a beak too. It's not, you know, we don't have to, not to accentuate facial features. Yeah, no shade. Yeah. But it's like, I'm just saying, it's like a very fresh Jennifer Aniston. She's probably done a little bit of TV. And her and her dad, I think it is, and her little brother, they moved to this house, and the house used to belong to this old dude who we see at the opening. And he has his wife has died, and he was quarreling with a leprechaun because he stole the leprechaun's gold, 100 pieces of gold. And the thing is, we don't really maybe they mention it. I don't know. I guess this would have benefited me for a revisit as to how he found the leprechaun or why he found the leprechaun or whatever. But he seals away the leprechaun for some spell after his wife is killed. And and I'll tell you, the leprechaun looks like a serious tour de force when the old man's dealing with him. And you're like, oh my God, this is really scary. I think he goes in a barrel, right?
Yes, he goes in this random big crate in the basement. Yeah. And he's there for 10 years.
It's 10 years. Okay. Yeah. And we need to take a moment. You've done a very good job painting the picture, but you need to also highlight that this is the dawn of the Trimark age. Now,
absolutely, Jeff, tell us.
In the 90s, you had, this is sort of like the continuation of what the Canon films and Vestron Video was in the 80s. I think Vestron Video is 80s, not really 90s as much. Vestron Video was, I don't know. Something. Yeah, Vestron Video was like late 80s.
Yeah.
That gave way to labels. You had a bunch of them, but the main one, the one that I remember, was motherfucking Trimark, which was just like they did a lot of straight to video stuff. They did a lot of low budget horror stuff. Here's some stuff that we got from Trimark.
Oh yeah, tell me.
We got Cyborg 2 with Angelina Jolie, which is a sequel to Cyborg with Van Damme. And if you've never seen Cyborg 2, it is with Jack Palance. And Angelina Jolie, you know, she gets fully naked and she is just like, it's
does
super
she really?
hot, 20-something. Yeah, she's super hot in it. And she's just like, she's gorgeous, man. And she's a robot. And it also has that dude, God, what's his name? He's in a lot of stuff. So you had Cyborg 2, you had, what's it called? Not Free Jack, it was Freeway. It was like a weird thriller with Eric Roberts.
Oh, okay. I thought for a second, it was it Freeway?
Not Free Jack. That's with Mick Jagger. Now it's going to bother me. Now I got to look this up.
I know. I'm looking it up too.
You also had the Leprechaun movies. You had Leprechaun, I believe 1, 2, 3, and 4 came out on Trimark. And then when Leprechaun 5, In the Hood and Leprechaun Back to the Hood were not on Trimark, I believe that might have switched over to Lionsgate because Lionsgate absorbed Trimark. But you also had Return of Living Dead Part 3.
Yeah.
You had Peter Jackson's Dead Alive,
which I still need to see. I haven't seen.
You never? Oh my god, dude!
It's like never available. It's like never streaming anywhere. I gotta find it somewhere. Do.
You're gonna watch Dead Alive. Oh, yeah, of course it's not available because this motherfucker's out of print. When that becomes available, you are gonna come on my show and we're gonna talk Dead Alive.
That's a good plan. Once I finally watch it, I can finally discuss with you. Yeah.
So you have Dead Alive, you have Leprechaun, you have Warlock, the Warlock series. Yeah. You have Death Wish movies. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, the Doom Generation, which was Greg Araki.
Oh yeah, I've never seen that one either.
You great have cast. To see. First of all, are you familiar with Greg Araki's movies in general?
Yes, I've seen a few. I don't know if I like them, but I am always curious about them. If that makes sense. I
love Greg Araki's films, and I think it's like the biggest crime in the world is that he has not continued to make movies. In fact, I would love to see him do a Scream movie. It would be really insane and really quirky and crazy, but I would like to see him. You got the Dentist movies. Brian Usna's Dentist movies were on Trimark.
Yeah, the Dentist, and also Pinocchio's Revenge. Oh, I remember
Pinocchio's Revenge. Sure.
Oh my god.
Sure, yeah. That was a big title That was a big title on thing. I'm trying. Oh, you have Brain Smasher Love Story, which had an early Terry Hatcher and the Dice Man, starring the Dice Man, and that is a kooky friggin' movie. That is a really kooky movie.
Amazing.
They're like running away from ninjas, like this weird ninja cult. It's really weird. The reason why I love Trimark so much is because it really captures that. It really captures the 90s and like this whole it captures the video store for me and the 90s and just like simpler times and just like my youth. And so there's nothing like putting in Return of the Living Dead 3, the tape, and like watching the trailers. And of course, one of the trailers is Leprechaun 2 and Dead Alive and just a bunch of trailers to stuff that I just love. I don't know. It's just like this perfect little time capsule. And so Leprechaun is a part of that. And so to get back to the plot, basically a leprechaun, a leprechaun is basically trying to track down his 100 pieces of gold. He gets released from the barrel. New people moved in. The dude from Teen Wolf plays this like simpleton. Is the only way to describe it, right?
Yeah,
Mark something. I forget his name.
Mark. I forget his name as well, but I'll look it up. It's not.
He's also in Pee Wee Herman. Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure.
Yes. And it's interesting, Jeff. Did you know? Because there are so many sequels, and I've only seen the first couple. I never made it to Leprechaun in Space, and after that,
you have to see Leprechaun in Space.
Yeah. Oh god, I remember. I remember 2 is in Vegas, and 3
is in Vegas. 3 is in Vegas.
3 is in Vegas.
2 is weird. 2 is not in Vegas. As a matter of fact, it's sort of like it starts off like a long time ago. It's like kind of like a fairy tale thing.
Yes. Okay. That rings a bell. Yes. His name's Mark Holton.
Holton. What else is he in?
You're right. He's in Teen Wolf 1 and 2. Yeah. He the year prior to this, another film I talked about in this podcast, he has a very small little role in A League of Their Own. That was one of his bigger things.
Right.
You know, he's still working because he's in the latest Leprechaun reboot as his character Ozzy.
I haven't seen that one yet, but now that you said that, now I have to rewatch it. Now I have to go and watch it.
I'm curious, but apparently, it's on IMDb. They list it as a comedy, fantasy, horror, but I have heard that it is pretty serious horror and not as comedic, and it like really loses.
It was made by WWF, movie studio. Didn't seem interesting to me.
Right?
And Warwick Davis.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't have a Leprechaun movie without Warwick Davis, who was in all 6 Leprechaun movies over a course of 10 years from 1993 to about 2003. And I know he's had like mixed feelings about he loves the Leprechaun series, but he also kind of hates it at the same time.
Yeah, I saw that too. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that it's weird. It's a weird thing. I'll tell you from the Peter Dinklage POV. Peter Dinklage is, again, I believe that the proper sensitive vernacular is little person. That is the way to communicate these things. And Peter Dinklage is a little person actor who is, very sensitive about the stereotyping and pigeonholing of little people in these various sort of stereotypical roles that go to little people, like elves and, like all these sort of mystical creatures and things. And, that usually little people are portrayed. You don't have a lot of little people who are just like just happen to be a little person. Like there's very few movies where it's like, and that's why The Station Agent is actually a really great film starring Peter Dinklage.
Yep.
Because he's just like, the fact that he is a little person does figure into the story, but like the reality is he's just a little dude, and that's it. And and that's, and that's also why he took on the role of Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, because it's like he's fighting against that stuff as Tyrion. He's trying to, sort of climb the ladder and whatnot. And showing that he's so much more than being just, as they call him in the series, an imp, the imp.
And do you know, because I don't know any, Game of Thrones goes over my head, but do you know in like the books, is that character a little person? Like, is that like a...
Yes.
That was always the case. Okay.
Right. So, but like, anytime, the point being is that there is a big stigma and sensitivity, and there's like two sides to it. And the other side of it is, hey, we're actors, and this is how we eat. And,
absolutely. And Warwick Davis especially has been obviously Willow, and he was Ewoks and Star Trek and all that. So that's interesting. He's the opposite.
Well, Willow was a
Dinklage,
and that's what's interesting too, is that I feel like Willow is like a really sort of like, and again, if anybody out there wants to correct me, and this is for a POV of someone who is not a little person and does not, just to be aware of that. But just that, like, that is a very positive sort of depiction of little people in cinematic roles, as opposed to, hey, look, it's what's it called from the Wizard of Oz, the Lollipop Gang, the Munchkins. Munchkins are like, hey, like whatever the thing is, or this idea of a little person playing a leprechaun, on some level, it's like, hey, like what the F, man, like you're making us, what are you doing? But then on the other hand, it's like, hey, I'm an actor. This is my profession. Here's a role. Yeah. Here's a role that's kept me eating for the last 10 years. And I've been doing other stuff, but like, that's, it's good to get a movie every, 7 movies in 10 years doing this thing. Too busy.
And someone like Warwick Davis, I guess that thinking obviously paid off, because a lot of his movies are quite memorable. A lot of his roles.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, he was even in Labyrinth, one of my faves. So it's a really interesting, two-sided conversation where, if you stay away from those roles, not only are you not working and making the money and just being in films, if that's what your goal is, but also you possibly are not in such memorable roles like Warwick Davis. So that's interesting.
So it's, listen, Warwick Davis has been in he was in just about every single Star Wars movie except for I think in episodes 2 and 3 he wasn't in those movies. Yeah. But he was in that's not true, actually. I think he was in those as well. I mean, he was in all the Star Wars movies and he was a huge Star Wars fan. So
did you know, I mean, you might have seen this online, and I saw it in the credits because I watched through to just see who's in there. George Lucas gets a special thanks because I guess Warwick Davis was under contract with Lucas, and George Lucas gave his approval to let him go, for 2 months to go shoot this Leprechaun movie. So how funny that big name is in this list.
There you go. And then what happens is basically they're basically just battling this leprechaun, and it gets very slapsticky. Oh yeah. And there's like, it also borders lines into, the idea that like it's not just a leprechaun, but the leprechaun comes from Irish folklore. The leprechaun has to be Irish. So then you go into like there's this sort of like you have like and again, I don't know how Irish people feel about it. And again, I'm not like here to like point out all that stuff, it's
part of the topic. Yeah.
But it's just interesting how like, then, that like goes one of the gags is that like he has to polish shoes. He's like, he can't resist.
Oh my God, Jeff.
Polishing shoes.
I forgot about them. There is a moment.
They're throwing the shoes to distract him. And he's like, he has to keep polishing the shoes.
When Jennifer's got to go check out the old man who I forgot is, they think he is still alive from the beginning. I thought he just died because he has like a heart attack stroke, but he's in
I don't remember what happened to him. He was there.
like old person's home, and so she's got to get there,
right.
right?
Yes.
And so to distract this leprechaun who's lurking around the house, they're throwing all these shoes, which also I'm like, wait a minute, where are all these shoes coming from? I mean, this house is like abandoned, so they just have this whole pile of shoes, and I completely forgot. He literally is bending over and furiously, shining the shoes, wiping them down, and letting her go. Oh yeah, that was.
Now, and he also what is fun. I don't know if this was in the writing or if this was Warwick's idea, but the leprechaun typically, and I think this is true in all the leprechaun movies, the leprechaun rhymes. All of his dialogue is rhyming, which is
a lot of it great. Is yes. Oh, it's so great. It's
really fun,
mischievous, and in the first one, at least, since I rewatched it earlier today, he sings songs. He sings pocket full of posy, like he's just playing.
The jumping. He's on the pogo stick.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great death.
Was that in 1 or was that in 3? I don't remember.
Maybe it comes back. It's been decades since I've seen the sequels. But
he's singing Knick Knack Patty at Whack, and he's bouncing on the guy's stomach.
Oh, that is a death.
Maybe that is in 1.
Yeah, at least they do it definitely in 1. Maybe they do it again, but that is pretty
I'll tell you
gnarly.
Something.
This old lep, he played one. He played pogo on his lawn. Teach you to steal me gold.
As a child, I remember that. That's in like my core memories of like trauma. We've talked about kinder trauma, and that was a kinder trauma moment for me, seeing someone get pogo stick to death by the leprechaun. That was super serious when I was a kid. That was like
I completely agree.
Serious, like, wow, that person is dying that way.
Isn't that so funny? That's so wild that, you and I have the same perspective because it's so goofy. If we saw this now in our 30s,
it's just
oh my
goofy.
God, we'd be like howling with laughter. But because we saw it when it was newish, oh my gosh, at that age, I remember that so well. That is a gnarly death when really it isn't. But to me, it's like, can you imagine you're lying there? He's just bitten your leg and now he's just jumping on the pogo stick on you and the guy's all bloody. Oh my God, what a death. There are some good deaths, I have to say. The cop. So Jennifer Aniston, this is towards the end when, like you said, you're so right. Things get very slapstick because, this movie is obviously not good, but there are some moments where I'm like, okay, I'm focused. I'm into it. I'm following along.
Different types of good. I mean, listen, here's the thing. Like, you say that this movie is not good, and I know what you mean when you say that.
Uh-huh.
But like, there's a category of, like, if someone were to ask me, is this movie good? I would say yes, but would I say it's good in the way that, like, Saving Private Ryan is good? No, of course not. It's good in that it's so bad. Like, that's what makes it good, is that it's bad. And there's a whole vibe in movies that I love. Like, for instance, I just watched the Buttercream Gang, which if you have not seen, oh my God, it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. It's totally out of print. It's called the Buttercream Gang. It came out in 92, and it's just one of those movies it's just so bad that it's great. And I don't think, low budget horror films don't fall into that paradigm. But if I have to rank, Leprechaun on Letterboxd, I might give it 4 stars, but I'm not giving it 4 out of 5 stars because it's a 4 out of 5 star movie.
Right.
I'm giving it 4 out of 5 stars because I liked it 4 out of 5 stars. And so I gauge my movies in that kind of way. So it's like kind of funny how like a masterpiece, like a freaking masterpiece will get 5 stars, but yet I also rated Dead Alive 5 stars. Is Dead Alive a 5-star movie? To me, it is. So I gave it 5 stars, but a lot of people would probably disagree. So it's like it's like this weird sort of thing where like something can be good without actually being good. And that's the category that I think Leprechaun and its ilk kind of fall into, where it's like, yes, I know this is not a 5-star movie, but like I still would give it, like I probably would give, I don't know what I rated Leprechaun, but I'd imagine probably like 3.5 stars because I love it, but like, it's not, like if it wasn't a good, like there are some movies that are so bad, but yet I'll still rate them kind of high because what I personally love about them are like, if I really enjoy them. And then movies that I think are like really bad, or like there are some movies that are like people really, really love or whatever. And I
Mm-hmm.
give it like, I don't know, like 1 star because I just don't think it's good. And it's like
Totally.
considered a good movie. So I don't know. I think
Yeah.
it's like it's very subjective.
Totally. But
Totally
you
valid.
bring up a good point about bad movies that are good, because I agree with you. This movie is good. I enjoy it. It makes me smile, which I don't know what that says about me. Sorry, everyone. But I think what I mean when I say it's not a good movie is you and I know we have better horror films that we appreciate.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Leprechaun isn't a movie that we probably think about more than a couple times a year, you know, and it's like, oh, you know what I mean? So there are other horror movies that really last, and even horror comedies, right? That are better, but at least, you know, we can appreciate this for what it is, this fun little under $1 million, you know, movie.
My ear! He got my ear!
You got the back door, right?
Ow!
You gotta stop the bleeding.
Now, tell me, Jeff, from all the sequels, from what you remember, do you regard them as highly as the first one? Or even in this franchise, I mean, do they really get, you know, really awful?
I gotta tell you, I think 4 and 5 are probably the best. Like,
wow. So in the hood is where it's at. Okay.
Oh yeah, with Ice-T is in it. You know, you don't. That's a thing. Like, that's the thing. This doesn't operate by like, you know, standard rules. Like, your great example. I'm currently watching. You saw that I was watching Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Oh yeah. Oh, did you watch all of them?
No, I've not seen 1 and 2 yet.
Oh my God, Jeff.
I know.
Okay.
It's hilarious. So I started because I was interviewing Brian Usner. I watched part 4. It was the first one that I saw.
Oh,
and
I
then
haven't seen
from
that
part
one.
4, I watched part 3. And then after part 3, I watched part 5.
Oh, God.
And then I stopped. And I'll probably wait till next year at Christmas time.
I know. Isn't that funny?
It's just so funny how like just to go out of order and to like do it like that.
Honestly, I mean, you're probably doing it the right way because it's not like that franchise is that great, but it is funny
4 is really good, and 5. Let me tell you something. Out of 3, 4, and 5, I think 5 might be the best one.
Really? Is one of them with Clint Howard, or am I getting my
Clint Howard in both 4 and 5? He has just a cameo in 5.
Okay.
Mickey Rooney is in 5.
Oh God, Mickey
and
Rooney. Oh.
I gotta tell you, like these are real. I mean, part 5 like could be its own. That's what Brian Usner is really good at. He also did. He's the director of Return of the Living Dead 3.
Okay.
On Trimark.
Yep.
And as a matter of fact, I think Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 4, The Initiation, which is about witches.
That was right around this time. Was that Trimark?
Yeah. Yes, and I think that was also Trimark. So he had a deal over at Trimark, and it's just kind of funny because like. It's just kind of funny, like though, like it's how like these weird middle sequels are like a great example, and I catch hell for this all the time, but you know, New Nightmares, I think the best and my favorite.
It's so good.
It's the best one, and it's the last one.
I know.
Yeah. So what does that say? You know, to at least I don't know. I feel like when it comes to like horror films, certain horror films. You know, sequels are, you know, sometimes better than even the original. So I don't really go by that. I don't really think that works even for the Leprechaun series where like literally every one of them is so batshit crazy that like they're all great. Like it's just what great do you want? Do you want to see Jennifer Aniston running away from Warwick Davis dressed as a leprechaun? Or do you want to see like aliens, like the Marines from Aliens battling a space leprechaun?
Oh my God, Jeff.
Like I think in outer space. Like, so, what do you want? It's all for there.
Would you say, since I've only seen 1, 2, and 3, should I watch? I guess I should continue. Okay, so I'll pick it up with space, and then I'll go to the hood. Okay, I don't know how I think I am going to put my foot down, even though I am curious how Ozzy, the Mark Holton character from the original, I am curious because he comes back in this latest one. But I agree,
that's a good hook. That is a good hook. If you're going to my curiosity is now peaked a little bit because you said that, because I'm like, now I want to see why like they brought that dude back who I feel like has not been in anything in years. So like
I know. To see
I'm
him,
interested.
and because you know, on this latest rewatch, obviously Jennifer Aniston's the lead. She's first billed. She does kind of the most final act fighting because she's the only one that hasn't really gotten hurt. But at times, rewatching it, Ozzy to me kind of almost feels like the co-lead because he's the one that first has an interaction with the leprechaun in the basement and no one believes him. Oh, he's this special guy, he's lost his marbles kind of thing, so no one throughout the whole movie, no one believes him until it's way too late.
He nails the 4-leaf clover on the barrel in the first place. That's what keeps him in there, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's the one that says you gotta. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, Grady, the old man, is the one that puts the 4-leaf clover on the box in the beginning. And then he tells Jennifer Aniston in a pretty sick reveal. So she's running through these creepy halls that no one is in at this rest home. Warwick Davis, our leprechaun, which I realized we never know the leprechaun's name. Isn't that kind of weird?
I think he might have a name in the later ones.
Maybe in the later but in this one at least he's just actually the boy. Yeah, the boy at the end he slingshots a piece of gum to the 4-leaf clover and it goes right, and he just says, "Hey, Lep." And then I think he says, "Fuck you, Lucky Charms." So I'm like, Lep. And that's what I was typing in my notes. I was just like, Lep goes here, Lep goes there. And I'm like, oh, okay, Lep. That's his nickname. But anyway, we find out about or at least Jennifer Aniston finds out about the 4-leaf clover because as she's running from Warwick Davis in this goofy wheelchair thing, then she runs to the elevator, which I feel like every good schlocky horror movie has to have an elevator moment.
Of course.
Right? The door's shut. And just as we think like, okay, next scene, in a really good surprise, I have to say, old man Grady, who she's there to see, falls, do you remember, from the top of the elevator? He just dangles down, right? And he's covered in blood. The leprechaun has got him, but he's not dead yet. And he tells her, you gotta put the 4-leaf clover on his body. You have to touch him with it. And that's how he dies. And in true early 90s bad horror, after he tells her this upside down, and I have to say, Jennifer Aniston's good. She's got some tears. I don't know if they're real, but she's selling it. She's good. And she's funny when she needs to be. You can tell there was a comedy star in there. She's looking up at him and she's thanking him. And then he very goofily dies in this big huff. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this movie is just too much fun, right? But another death I wanted to say that's my second favorite death is, so he kills a cop.
Well, hold on. Wait. Real quick, before you get to that.
Yeah.
He's driving and he's not actually in the car. He's just floating. And he gets pulled over by the cops.
Yeah.
And then the cops are like, how old are you? He's like, I'm 600 years old.
Yes. And then he rips the cop's face. Yeah. He's in this little toy car from the shop where he did.
Oh, is that what it is? He's in a toy car. Yeah.
He's in this silly. That's what it's funny because every now and then, and I had read, maybe you did too, that the producers were all torn. Trimark wanted a Freddy, a Chucky, that horror comedy. They wanted Critters, all that kind of stuff. They argued about
the tone, and you can see it. The tone
you can tell.
Wonky.
The tone is definitely wonky, and apparently the director, this was directed by Mark Jones, he, I guess, was okay with Warwick because it was, I guess it stemmed kind of, Warwick Davis was the one, as he's doing this, he wanted to lean more comedy. And like we said, with all those horror movies, a lot of them were, kind of schlocky comedies. So I think he thought, all right, well, I'm feeling like these lines are so goofy. I got to lean into comedy. That's what's kind of popular in these horror movies right now. And the director didn't fight him. Apparently Mark Jones was agreeing with him on that and was okay with it. And he went on to do Rumpelstiltskin a couple years later, a crazy horror movie as well. I remember
He wrote a lot of friggin' movies, man.
A lot of TV too. Before this, he did a ton of TV. So he's been writing for years and years and years.
He directed 8 movies.
Yeah. But I just thought that was interesting because so they're on board with it being funny. Trimark apparently wanted it to be funny, but the producers, I guess the production company that hired Mark Jones, I don't know, they really wanted it gory, scary, serious. So you can definitely feel at times when it's gory, serious, gory, funny, scary, serious, scary, funny, so it really does meander a little bit.
The good thing about that though is that sometimes when they do have these, they do these sort of when they're on the fence about stuff, you do get these very weird sort of movies that will shift from one tone to the other tone, or sometimes they ride the edge of both in a way that just kind of works for the movie. And I feel like that's what's happening with Leprechaun because, it goes for instance, he's a very grotesque looking creature, at least from,
Oh yeah.
what you picture in your mind, even if you're like actually like looking at it, maybe like you're watching a Blu-ray and it's high def and like you can kind of see that the makeup looks cheap or whatever. But the makeup, I mean, that was pretty complicated makeup stuff. So it's like, when you look at the grotesque makeup and then pair that with comedy, because much like colors, everything has like genres have their own sort of complementary wheel, and the two opposites are comedy and horror. They directly complement each other. So something that's really scary can also be really funny, and something that's really funny can also be really scary. And that's why you get so many great comedy horror and horror comedy. And isn't it funny how all I've done is inverse those words, but you know exactly what I mean.
Oh, totally.
When I say a horror comedy versus a comedy horror, and I can think of like a half a dozen movies that fall into like a great example. What is like a comedy horror? I think of, well, I mean, maybe this is more of a spoof, but I think of like Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Oh, I love that one.
Which is, firmly a comedy first before it is, doing anything, in the horror realm. And it's not even really horror. The horror element is just that it has Dracula. Yeah. And then versus a horror comedy, which, you got your Evil Dead 2, you got House, you got these things where it is House. A horror movie first that with comedy, weaved through it. And these balances kind of work. And that's what's kind of funny about how slapstick works, where as I'm watching like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, again, I'd seen it once before in the theater. Oh yeah. And I'm reminded of how he is such a master of not just violence, but of comedy. All of his violence is comedic. All of it is slapstick based. He rides this incredible line of horrifying and hilarious all at the same time. What's happening at the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you've seen this film? I'm not spoiling it? Okay.
Yep.
Just to make sure. Is so like, I mean, it's brutal, it's super violent, and at the same time, it's almost like a Looney Tune.
Oh, it's totally Looney Tune. Yep, I agree. And it's my favorite part of the movie is how
oh my god
wild that ending is.
His violence is also like a release. Like in every in Django, same thing. Oh, yeah. It is like this it's its own type of like violent catharsis that occurs. He builds his stories up with such tight tension and then like winds them up like a rubber band and lets them snap with these moments of extreme violence or extraordinary violence. And again, like nobody does gunshots like Quentin Tarantino. Nobody like go back and watch, look at Hateful Eight, look at Django Unchained. Yeah. So the point is that my whole bringing this up is just this idea that like you can do comedy and you can do something violent. You could do that's also really funny. You can do something horrifying. That's also really funny. That 1 second is so terrifying and the next second is really funny. Or a great example, look at Return of the Living Dead and Reanimator and Dead Alive, even. No, not Dead Alive. Return of the Living Dead and Reanimator. 2 movies where the actors and the performances are so serious. They're so completely serious that's what makes it funny. So you're watching somebody saw a reanimated cadaver's head off with a bone saw, and it's the funniest thing in the world because they believe in it. Yeah. There's such conviction with what they're doing. So it's this weird sort of back and forth. So hearing that there's this thing in the studio, push and pull with Trimark and the director and whatever, about the tone, and having something just sort of seesaw from feeling one way to another, as we described as children, like what we felt like watching this. We felt only the horror side. Yep. We didn't see, we were too young to understand the comedy side of what was all there, that fine line that they were doing.
But speaking of violence, my second favorite death with that cop later. So he's killed the cop. The cop's been dead for a while, but at the end, Jennifer Aniston's, it's in the last few minutes, I remember. She's running to the cop car. She thinks he's alive. He's all bloody and gross, and then Leprechaun's there, good old Lep, and that's right. She takes the cop's baton, and she jams it into little Lep's eye.
It's really violent. It's really violent.
It's pretty gross. Yeah, I have to say, even though this movie at times almost felt like an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, and no shade, love that show, but like the way it's shot and the music, at times I'm like, this is just like, Canadian TV or something. But they didn't shy away from the gross stuff. So now he has green blood, of course, because he's a leprechaun.
Right.
And he doesn't have an eye. And so he actually then gets in the car with her. She's in the back. She's screaming, good old cop car horror.
Right.
And he pulls an eyeball out of the dead cop and inserts it into his socket. And I'm just like, wow, like how, like this is cinema. This is early 90s horror cinema.
Please get out!
An eye for an eye, me dear.
So green blood that's how you get around the censors.
Oh,
if it's
smart.
Green,
yeah.
If it's green blood, that's what they did in From Dusk Till Dawn. If you have,
okay.
The way that you're going to mask that is, give the leprechaun green blood, which
you're
is
right.
Also kind of an Irish. There's like I think there's a thing about like green blood or something.
Yeah.
So it's like another example of like this weirdly stereotypical
you're right,
Irishness connection. But listen, we all have. I guess it exists there's a lot of that stuff.
Totally.
It is what it is, man.
Yeah, because by the end, when he's climbing out of the well and he's just this mushy thing, he's all green.
Right.
Oh my God, you're right. And it makes me think of like movies like Troll 2. I feel like there was a lot of green goo in those ones,
Well, they were vegetarians. Those trolls, they turn you into plants so they could eat you.
Yes. Speaking of vegetarians, I had forgotten because, Jennifer Aniston plays this girl, Tori, in this movie who's very high maintenance. We like her, but she's
high maintenance.
Right.
Yeah.
She hates this old house. She can't, they don't really make it clear what she and her dad are doing in this house. I guess they're just renting it for the summer or something.
Isn't the little boy her little brother, or is he with the simpleton?
Oddly enough, the little boy is with the simpleton, and the little boy is the brother of the hunky painter. But I'm like,
I was about to say,
like
painters. There's painters.
Yes,
right.
They're called like three guys that paint is their like company name.
I forgot about the guy too.
Yeah, he's from his name, I forget his name, Ken Olant, I believe. He's from April Fool's Day, others, horror fun 80s movie. So yeah, he's our leading man who is pretty. He's a pretty side character. But yeah, they're this random trio of painters. But speaking of vegetarian, I had forgotten that in all of her high maintenance stuff, which some of it is warranted, but they're at the diner. They've taken her dad to the hospital because he has that really fun scene where he thinks it's a cat in this hole in the stump and he's putting his hand in there. Here, kitty, kitty, we all know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Dude, that was crazy too.
Yes,
that was scary.
That's a great moment. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because you just know.
You're just waiting for it. And he's like, come on, kid. And they're watching and then his hands like all shoot up. And then you see a really kind of dumb, sort of CGI or whatever, you see Warwick Davis in the hole and he's like, but so they've taken him to the hospital. And so now they're at a diner. And I just thought it was funny, speaking of vegetarian, that on top of all of her high maintenance stuff, he says to her, the pretty guy, Nathan is his name. He goes, you're pretty thin. You should have some roast beef or something dumb. And she goes, I don't eat meat. I don't eat anything,
such a 90s,
and it's funny because it's like, oh, are we like supposed to be annoyed by that? She's like, I don't eat meat. I'm a vegetarian. And he's like, oh God. And isn't it funny? Like I'm watching, I'm like, hey, you go girl. That's great. But it's like back then it's like, oh God.
Well, what's funny, what's kind of funny is like the way that the connotation there is more like, and that's what, again, all these 90s movies are full of this stuff. And that's like my favorite part about watching 90s movies, to like go back and like pick that stuff out and like laugh at it. Like the more like, I guess, like grating thing is that he's saying, hey honey, like you should eat some roast beef. You're on the skinny side. Put on put on a couple pounds, fill out a little bit there. Right. And her in the movie or in 90s sensibility land, it's like, I don't eat meat, I'm a vegetarian. It's like, that's not the issue. The issue is that he's like telling you, he's like commenting about your figure and wanting you to put on a couple pounds because he likes a girl with some junk in the trunk or whatever.
He wants
a
90s American woman who eats
meat.
But
that's what's fun. But that's even more funny is that like, or that's just as funny in that like, again, like the joke, or at least the 90s whatever, like the punchline in the 90s is that like she's like, I'm a vegetarian, and like today no one would even probably bat an eyelash. They'd be more like, wow, he's like telling her to like, you know,
the focus is like, fuck off, don't tell me what to eat, I'm good, thanks, right?
Right.
Yeah,
but that's what's fun. That's what's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I mean,
Little girls shouldn't look for four-leaf clovers.
The holidays are over, but burning candles is something you can do all winter long to stay bright and cozy. So, Release Date Rewind listeners, you get 20% off your order at Nubble Light Candle. They are 8-ounce high-quality soy wax candles made with essential oil blend fragrances, and they're handmade in southern Maine and inspired by Maine, New England, and the Nubble Lighthouse. It's a nice way to bring New England to wherever you are. So go to nubblelightcandle.com and type in the code REWIND to get your discount. One last thing that I thought was fun, again, going back to our guy Freddie and how popular he was. This movie, do you remember, Jeff, towards the end, as everything's going haywire, Jennifer Aniston's on the phone. She's, I'm trying to remember. I think she's trying to call for help. The phone's dead, but it rings. And it's him. It's a leprechaun. She rips it off the wall, but it's still ringing. Ooh. And obviously,
very Freddy Krueger, right?
Very Freddy. And anyone would be like, okay, don't answer the phone. We obviously know it's Leprechaun. But she bends down, she picks it up. And as we know, in both Nightmare 1 and then New Nightmare, there's some fun phone, gross, tongue action. Yep. Iconic, right? And this movie totally copies that, totally rips that off with a little gross hand coming out of the mouth. Do you remember that moment?
Which is what an opportunity to do. It's like when you have, in a weird kind of way, the Leprechaun and Freddy kind of operate in similar spaces. The Leprechaun's powers are terrestrial and tangible, while Freddy operates in the incorporeal and the dream world. So it's like it would be a shame to be, when you fall asleep, you got to worry about Freddy, and when you wake up, assuming that you have his gold, you have to worry about the Leprechaun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they both are kind of like they both sort of run the same sort of gambit, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, I just thought like shot for shot, that is a straight up rip off Mark Jones and team of Leprechaun, but
a little bit,
but whatever, little nod there.
Look out, it's in the cabinets.
Toward the basement.
We're like really scared. Hello, I need the police. This is an emergency.
Oh yeah, and I just remembered. It's funny because some of these killers back then there's a little bit of homoeroticism kind of stuff going on, and in this same scene in the kitchen, Leprechaun is hiding in the different cabinets, if you remember that, in the drawer, and then he just reaches and he grabs pretty guy Nathan's bulge, and I don't
remember that.
Yeah.
What does he say? What does he actually say? Or he just grabs his dick?
He just grabs it. He just totally like manhandles him as he's got the shotgun, and they're like, oh, which cabinet is he in? And now he's in the drawer and I thought like, wow, okay. It's not even, you would think it could be, I mean, because again, this is a comedy. You'd think it'd be like a little punch, ooh, or like even like a point. But no, he's going under, and he's, I was just like, okay, that is a bold move, Leprechaun.
I mean, there was, in what you are speaking, it's funny, like what in hearing you describe it, like it doesn't really come off in that way, like that reference that you're putting there, but that was very common that was absolutely a thing in the 90s. That was like a punchline. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It was like a great example is on SNL, Schlitz Gay. You remember Schlitz Gay?
I don't.
With Chris Farley and Adam Sandler, and they're just two bros cleaning out a pool, drinking a beer, and then when they open it up, it turns out to be Schlitz Gay, and it's just a bunch of dudes in banana hammocks.
Oh my God! Yes.
The hook is just that they're gay.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's the joke. Like, but that was like a 90s sensibility.
Yeah.
So it's like that's like kind of like that was like one of the tropes back then, and it's like that's the punchline. Like which is so funny because today people be like, okay, what's the humor? I don't get it. Like so they're just do
right.
two gay dudes drinking beers. Like, what's the joke? But in the 90s, it was like it was subversive.
Yeah.
And that's what's like, and it's interesting how things have sort of changed today. So it's like where you're grabbing for some guy's junk, you know, it's like, oh, it's funny because he's grabbing for some guy's junk.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, I don't know, but at the same time, I feel like that joke might fit into like an Evil Dead. Like, I could imagine it happening in the Evil Dead, and I wouldn't necessarily see it in the same light. I just think of it as slapstick. I didn't revisit this movie, so I'd have to like really rewatch it and see if I pick up on that vibe. I'm not sure if I would. I'd have to rewatch it.
It just sort of threw me, you know, in my 35-year-old perspective of seeing this again. Like, I remembered I guess in my mind, I thought he just like pointed at it like with his sharp nails, you know, but he's really, you know, like thumbing it, and I just thought like, wow, okay, we're going for this guy. So yeah, that's my last observation about this one. Any other things you wanted to say, Jeff, before I let you go?
Well, I was about to say, okay, I guess we do know in the later movies, like in the fourth movie, he's after a princess, and I believe in the second one he is.
There's something with a princess in the second one too.
In the second one, yeah, in the second one for sure. But like, other than that, like, I'm not really sure what the Leprechaun's deal is. Like, I don't know what he's into. He's just sort of like.
I know. So this movie ends
just loves gold
because the Ozzy character had swallowed his gold, his one piece of gold, because he's counting 99, and you know he's mad about that 100th piece. So he doesn't get that. So I don't know what it's been so long, like I said, since I've seen the sequels. I don't know, what his mission is in each film. But it's like, you got your 99 pieces of gold. Just be happy. I mean,
in like the later ones, he wants to. No, I guess he's always after his gold. Really.
I would imagine.
Gold, he just loves gold. That's
I guess as they go on, it's gold and princesses, lovers, and then I don't know what he wants in the hood. I guess I don't know.
No, they have his gold. They do have his gold.
Okay, they do have his gold. Okay.
Oh, no, there's a flute. I remember there's a flute.
Oh God. Okay.
That was like at the height, man. Like that, man. The straight to video store days, and like Leprechaun.
I remember them well
so great, man.
On the walls at Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. I remember totally.
But it's like there's so many horror movies where it's like I wasn't actively looking to rent it, but like I would like see it up on the wall, and now I'm on a quest to watch everything. But like at the time, these are just like. It's just like part of the scenery of a horror section in a video store. Like, I know I'm going to go there. I'm going to see these very familiar images that I always see every time I come to this place.
Totally.
And so they're like burned into your brain if you're of a certain age.
Oh yes. I can picture, because the posters were kind of green especially for the hood ones, and blue for the space. You know, it's just funny how your mind just remembers Warwick Davis in these different shades on each poster of this franchise. Yeah.
Leprechaun.
It's out. It's out of the crate.
13 or 14 years ago, Darren Lynn Bousman, who did some of the Saw sequels, and he did Repo the Genetic Opera, which was a sort of an attempt to do cults. It was like marketed as a cult film. You can't market a cult film. A cult film is a cult film. He was on the trail of doing Repo the Genetic Opera, and there was scuttlebutt on the internet about him directing Leprechaun in the Old West. And it never happened. It never came to fruition, but it was something that he wanted to do. It was something I was talking about. And when I saw him at the Music Box for this signing thing for Repo the Genetic Opera, I asked him about it, and I had a poster for that. And I was like, I asked him to write something about Leprechaun in the Old West on the poster, and he totally did. Something about like, someday I'm going to make Leprechaun in the Old West. I think it was like, I wanted him to write it, like make a declaration that he would.
You wanted a confirmation. I love that.
Yeah, and it just never happened. But there was a little bit of like, hey, there's going to be a Leprechaun in the Old West movie with Warwick Davis and all that.
Wow,
and
I did not know
nothing
that.
ever happened. Yeah.
Oh,
so that's really the only other thing I could think of to say about.
I have to say, Jeff. Yeah, I feel like that's a no-brainer. Like maybe
maybe
Warwick has to come back. He's got to do what Jamie Lee and Courtney Cox, everyone's coming back to their movies.
That's right.
Warwick's got to come back and do one last one in the Wild West.
Yeah, give us a trilogy, man. Give us the Leprechaun trilogy. I don't know what it would be about, but give us the full Leprechaun trilogy.
God. Well, he's now in there's a Willow TV series on Disney Plus, so he's still working. He's still, so okay, well maybe we'll see Warwick come back someday. We'll see about that. Awesome, Jeff. Well, where can people find you, find your show? You're on YouTube. Where else are you?
You can find me. Just go to YouTube and search FRUMESS or youtube.com/Frumess. And that is where you can find my entire, just everything. And I'm constantly live streaming on the internet, talking about music, movies, pop culture. And we just did a whole show about cryogenics and like the failed first frozen people who melted and like how like crazy. It's very disturbing, but it was super fascinating. So we cover stuff like that too, like weird history, science stuff. And come join us. We're always live. You can come chat in the live chat, and we have a good time.
Yeah, you're always busy, and people can also listen to those episodes if they can't watch. Everything's
Spotify, on Amazon, Apple, Google Play, Stitcher, the works.
Love it.
Wherever you get your podcast stuff, you can find us.
Love it. Awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to this episode, and thank you, my friend Jeff Frumess, for another great, insightful chat about a movie from our past. If you're a visual person, video of our conversation will be on Portland Media Center's website and YouTube page next month. Plus, you can see all sorts of visuals on the Release Date Rewind Instagram page. I think it's a great companion to this podcast, if I do say so myself. And thanks Greg Clements for the logo, Kyle Motzinger for the theme song, and PMC. Tell your friends about this episode, and next time we'll discuss another wacky guilty pleasure from the 90s, Spice World. All right, see ya.